Well, joining me now is Dr. Jasmine Zhou of UCLA. Dr. Zhou, great to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. Let me start off with a basic question. How important, how critical is it for us, for doctors to know about diseases in advance, like cancer, like heart disease, other diseases?
Yeah. As we all know, the early detection is very important. For cancer, we know that if the cancer is detected later stage, then very little survival chance. Even though with development all kind of therapy, it's getting better, but still, it's the outlook is not very good. So on the contrary, if the cancer is detected earlier, then in the early stage, stage one, hopefully, then a surgery will address most of the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So yeah.
go
So
ahead.
the
I'm sorry, I
survival
didn't
rate
mean to interrupt you.
is usually much better, above 80% in for the most cancer type. Yeah, detected
So
stage.
it's really important, it's critical to detect it early so you can treat it. And you and the team at UCLA have come up with a early detection, for lack of, I'm not a doctor, but you've come up with a way to detect these diseases earlier. First, what is it called and how does it work?
It's called a massive scan test. And what it does is that it profiles the methylation pattern. It's an epigenetic pattern of the cell-free DNA, the DNA floating around in the blood cells. The way it profiles the methylation of cell-free DNA genome-widely. So basically, it captures the epigenetic markers of cell-free DNA broadly. And we know that cell-free DNA actually coming from all kinds of organs in our body because every day about 50 to 70 billion cells die in our body. And those cells just share the DNA and other debris into the bloodstream. So therefore, in our body, in our blood, there are DNA floating around, which is called cell-free DNA, and the epigenetic pattern of those DNA could, tell us information about all organs in our body. And if somebody has tumor, there'll be tumor DNA, and the epigenetic pattern of the cell-free DNA will tell us, whether there is tumor DNA there. If the signal is strong enough, then we will know. And if the person has cancer, in which part of the body, in which organ the cancer resides.
So how does it, well, do I have to submit a blood sample? Is it vials and vials of blood? How does it work? Do you collect a sample from the patient and run it through the process?
Yeah, so we collect a tube of blood. In principle, the paper we mentioned, in the PNS paper, we use 10 nanogram of cell-free DNA, which is basically from about 2 to 3 mL of plasma, 4 to 6 mL of whole blood. So a tube of DNA, tube of blood. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't mind doing that if I knew in advance whether or not I had a disease. And I know you've just uncovered this or developed this method. How long till people like me are able to access this type of test? Because I could see someone trying to do this annually before they're around their
Yes.
physical, right? To
Yeah.
gain access. So how long till the customers can take advantage?
So, in fact, the clinical indication of liver cancer early detection of this technology has already been licensed to the startup called EarlyDX and is ready for commercialization. The issue is insurance coverage. So
Mm.
the team in the EarlyDX is working on the insurance coverage, which actually needs a large clinical trial, and they need to raise funds. So that's where the roadblock is. But otherwise, if patients want to pay themselves, then it's much a simpler problem. Yeah.
Yeah, so the if I'm understanding correctly, it already has existed for quite some time in detecting liver cancer. Now it's ready for detecting other types of diseases, but the hang up, as usual, is around the cost and whether or not regular insurance is going to pay for it.
That's true. That's true. The assay itself, the test itself has information to detect many diseases. And liver cancer is the first clinical indication that the team, our team has already conducted multi-site, blind clinical study. And for other indications like lung cancer, ovarian cancer, and so on, the clinical validation is still on the way. Now, for the clinical test to be paid by insurance, they require large real-world trial, and that takes more funding to do.
Yeah, understandably, but if this works as you've described it, and I'm sure we only have 8 minutes to talk about this, but I'm sure you have documents and reams of research to support it. I couldn't see why someone wouldn't or organizations wouldn't want to fund it, right, doctor? I mean, because you're on the brink of something, and we could significantly, if it had wide scale adoption, you could bring down healthcare costs overnight.
Exactly. So, the startup is raising funds to fund this clinical trial.
Yeah.
And also, Early DX is looking for a partnership with biotech or pharma or other AI companies, to partner to push the expansion of the clinical development and also clinical indications, to accelerate the process. Because the information of the test would enable the AI-powered, new universal disease detection. In the future, if we collect enough data, then basically, you can build an AI model for a variety of diseases. The test itself has all the information, but there's training data required to build, an AI model, a specific disease indication.
Well, anyone who's watching, they should certainly reach out to you, Dr. Zhou, and if they have the funds and want to support this research. Personally, I have no dog in the hunt, so to speak, but it seems like a no-brainer to me. And if successful, as I said, would certainly bring healthcare costs long-term down overnight. Dr. Zhou, we're going to have to leave it there. Great research. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon, Doctor.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for watching, and don't forget, we're back again tomorrow morning with another great expert and another great topic. You can tune in right here Monday through Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place, delivered directly to your email box. Check it out at our website.